Okay. Thank you to all of you who agitated to have this share. It's meaningful to me then that there's a request for a share. Parshas Vayetze, I want to share with you. We're doing this Tuesday night. Next Tuesday night, I'm going to be on an airplane at this time. So I'm heading to Eretz Yisrael. And then the next Tuesday night, I'm going to be probably in an airplane again, more or less. So we have to figure that out. But if there's taka an interest, so please stay in touch with Rabbi Woznicki. And I know there are some people who listen to the recording that also expressed an interest. I will try to do it. The mania for me is that I need an olam here to be able to give the share like a mensch. So if we have that kind of commitment for that, so then I'm more than happy to do it. Okay, I want to discuss a deep yesod about Yaakov Avinu's avodah, and to kind of pull together the strand of this elusive Beis Medrash or Sheim ve'ever. This Beis Medrash or Sheim ve'ever, very, very interesting. You know, Rivka goes to Vatelech Lidrash as Hashem, she goes to Beis Medrash or Sheim, and Yosef learns from the Beis Medrash of Sheim. Yaakov teaches him what he learned in the Beis Medrash of Sheim. Yaakov spends 14 years in the Beis Medrash of Sheim. Yoshev Ayhalim, some Rashi says Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever, that Yaakov was a Yoshev Ayhalim, he learned in the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever. So there seems to be throughout the lives of the Avos this type of limud that's specifically called the limud of the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever. What's fascinating, I started to point this out by Shalashudis just in the most surface way, and I'd like to go significantly deeper into it tonight, that the Torah doesn't ever mention the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever, ever. And not only that, but the fact, if you read Parshas Vayetze, if you read Parshas Toldos and Vayetze, you will honestly think that Yaakov Avinu went from Beis Yitzchak to the Beis Lavan without stopping off in between. Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheva, Vayelech Harana. And it's only because Chazal, through nuanced diyukim in the psukim, Chazal found some mekoros to the idea that he learned in the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever. And if it's truly such an important milestone in the life of Yaakov Avinu, so important that he taught that Torah over to Yosef HaTzadik, why isn't it mentioned in the Torah? So I want to start with the yesod that my Rosh Yeshiva taught us, that is such an important yesod b'chlal in understanding the way Chazal express themselves, and that is that the Torah is incredibly real. And it's so real that the Torah is not just transmitting information, but the way that it transmits the information is a reflection of the essence of the information. So that means that if the Torah transmits the information that Yaakov Avinu learned by Beis Medrash Sheim ve'ever in a hidden way, that means that the essence of the limud b'Sheim ve'ever was something that's nistar, was something hidden. And you see it's meduyik in Chazal, because the lashon in Chazal is that Yaakov was taman atzmai. He was tamun b'Beis Medrash Sheim ve'ever. He hid himself. Of course, a Beis Medrash where one is matmin himself is a Beis Medrash that's not mentioned explicitly in the psukim. But what's the Torah Sheim ve'ever? What does it represent? And of course, obviously, it goes without saying, but we have to repeat that we're not here to say that we understand these things or that we have a full understanding of them, but even just to feel like we're in the room of where these things are, that we have some direction of understanding, lights up these parshiyos for us, and it'll be very, very, very big chizuk and very important. So the two Ramazim in the Torah, for the Yud Dalet Shana that Yaakov Avinu learned to Beis Sheim ve'ever, the first one is in the second pasuk in the parsha, where the pasuk says when he came to the makom that he had the chaloim of the sulam, that it says vayishkav b'makom hahu, and vayishkav b'makom hahu is a diuk. B'makom hahu he went to sleep. But for 14 years, when he was Beis Medrash Sheim ve'ever, he didn't sleep. Rashi, vayishka b'makom hahu loshen miyut, be'oisay makom shochav, aval yudal et shonim sheshimesh bebeis ever lo shochav balayla shehaya oisek b'Torah. And the idea that the Torah is megala to us, the 14 years he learned B'Shem ve'ever, by telling us that he didn't sleep there. And I'm sure some of you have heard me say it this way before, but mitaycha chavivos, of the way my Rebbe expressed it, when he asked us to understand what the significance was of Yaakov not sleeping for 14 years, the way he said it was, as mistama veneret gevena yoshev ayholim hater oichet ganz gut gelernt. Probably when he was Yoshev Ayholim, he also, you could hear him saying that, right? He still learned very well. Like Mistama, he was a big masmid then also. Like, but punkt, by this limud of the 14 years bebeis Sheim ve'ever, here it's important for Chazal to say he was such a masmid, he didn't sleep. No, obviously, his not sleeping is a reflection of the essence of the Torah that was being taught in this place. And we need to understand how. We need to understand what that means. The other place that is a remez, and actually the 14 years comes from there, is from the end of Parshas Toldos. In the end of Parshas Toldos, it says that Esav went to Yishmael, Vayelech Esav El Yishmael. Esav went to Yishmael, and he took Machlas, the daughter of Yishmael ben Avram, the sister of Nevoyos. And Rashi says, why does it say the sister of Nevoyos? So Rashi says that this is to tell you that by the time Esav took the daughter of Yishmael, Yishmael was no longer alive, and hence it calls her no longer the Bas Yishmael, but by the time the Chasana came, she was Achos Nevoyos. Nevoyos was welcoming people by the door of the Chasana, not Yishmael. So Rashi spells this out, and then Rashi says, we see from here, and you could go through the whole mathematical sugya. Rashi goes through the mathematics, it's delicious. Rashi goes through the math, and Rashi says you could figure out from this story, you could figure out that Yaakov Avinu was Beis Sheim ve'ever for 14 years. And I ask you, that's how we find out that Yaakov Avinu learned Torah for 14 years from a pasuk of Vayelech Esav El Yishmael? That's the Gilui? Certainly, again, there's something going on there that's reflective of the essence of learning in the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever. Somebody by the Oraisa Siyam, one of the speakers, pointed out that when it says in Parshas Vayeshev that Yaakov Avinu's relationship with Yosef is that Yosef was a ben Zekunim, that the Baal HaTurim says there, and I verified that it's there, the Baal HaTurim says that Zekunim is Gematria Raz, secret. Because Shemasa loy Razei Torah. He taught him the secrets of the Torah. Those secrets of the Torah, Chazal tell us, is what he learned with Beis Medrash when he was Nitman, when he was learning in secret, what the Rashiva called sometimes the Chadrei Chadarim of a Talmud Chacham, that type of nitman bebeis Sheim ve'ever. So what is this? What are these secrets? So I want to share with you a maral. Be'etzem, I want to share a maral and a reaction to that maral. That I went through my notes. I can't find right now where I have written down that the Rashiva said this. But I wouldn't know it without him. If it's in my head, it came from him, and I almost could remember him saying it. Perhaps I even could remember writing it. So I don't know if I didn't end up holding on to that writing, or it's somewhere where I don't know. But I want to share with you something. It's a very, very, very sophisticated, that's how I know I didn't think of it myself. Very, very, very sophisticated, deep appreciation of a very important yesod. When we say Aleinu, we describe 3 places. We say Shehu Noita Shamayim, V'yoseid Oretz, and then U'moishav Yikore Bashamayim Imal, that's the Shamayim, and then we say U'shchinas Uzay V'govhei Meroimim. So we talk about the Oretz, the Shamayim, and the Govhei Meroimim, the like even higher than the Shamayim. Momo, could you give me the Yeshaya, Sefer Yeshaya, right behind you? Other way, yeah. You see this? No, to the left? To the left, right? Kamat there. No, back to the right. Yeshaya. Yeah. Okay, this three places, Shamayim, Oretz, and Govei Meroimim, the Targum uses to explain the three Kadoshes of Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. The Kara Zeh El Zeh Ve'omar, Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Hashem's Kedusha, three places. Zog the Targum, Kaddish B'Shmei Meroima Ilah Beis Shchinte. Right, the Kaddish in Shamayim, Kedusha in Shamayim, the place of his Shechina. Kaddish al Ara Oivad Gevorte, so the Kaddish on the world, in the world, and then Kaddish le'olam le'olmei olmaya, some kind of Kedusha le'olmei olmaya. So the Maharal describes that these three Kedushas also represents the Kedusha. I'll explain what it means in a minute. The Kedusha of Hashem that's expressed on the Oretz, the Kedusha of Hashem that's expressed in the Shamayim, and the Kedusha of Hashem that's expressed La'olam Li'olmei Olmaya, like beyond, above and beyond. We find in Uvalatzian a similar thing, correct? In Uvalatzian is a similar expression of the three Kadoshes. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's probably the same targum. Kaddish b'shmei meroime ilah beis shchinte, Kaddish al ara oivad gevurte, Kaddish la'olam li'olmei olmaya. What are these three places? So the Maharal in the Sivha Avodah Perek Yud Aleph, the Maharal goes through, and I'm just going to say like the basics because who are we to understand the Maharal? But just a little bit, that the Maharal says that when the Beis HaMikdash is standing, the Shefa of Kedusha comes from the Shamayim to the Oretz. And the Shamayim means the world of Ruchnius that we can see, that we can perceive. Because when the Beis HaMikdash is standing, Klal Yisrael is so connected to Ruchnius that there's a sense of a chibur between Shamayim and Oretz. Beis HaMikdash shel Maila, Beis HaMikdash shel Mata, Machain l'Shivtecha. There's a sense that there's Shamayim and Oretz, and we are on the Oretz, and we're receiving the Shefa from Shamayim. The Lashon of the Maharal, Shamayim hu ha'olam ha'ruchnis shenira lanu. Says the Maharal something magnificent. The Maharal says that the Gemara in Saita says that once the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the Ela Alma Alma Koi, what is the world standing on? So the Gemara says on Kedusha de Sidra, the Yehei Shmei Rabba de Agadita. So it's on Kedusha de Sidra, which is Uvalatzian, and on Yehei Shmei Rabba. Zok the Maharal, what is this? The world is standing on Uvalatzian and Yehei Shmei Rabba? What is that? So he says like this. He says when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, we no longer see the Shefa from HaKadosh Baruch Hu coming from the Shamayim to Oretz. But make no mistake about it, it is still coming. But we don't have the mechanism of the Shefa coming down. We don't have the Beis HaMikdash Shel Maila and the Beis HaMikdash Shel Mata. When we're in Galus, when it's a matzav of Churban, the Shefa comes from a much, much higher place. Ushchinas uzay begovei meroimim le'olam u'li'olmei olmaya. The Shefa comes from a much, much, much higher place that's not near Elanu. That's what he says. I want to explain what that means. And he says that's Kedusha de Sidra, is these three Kadoshes, and the Yehei Shmei Rabba, because you say Yehei Shmei Rabba le'olam u'li'olmei olmaya is a reference to that. You know, that's what we, in Kaddish, is the only time, he says, the only tefillah where we reference that Gavhei Meroimim, we say, La'olam u'li'olmei olmaya. What is he saying? What, at Shamayim, there's like 100 miles up and 200 miles up? Like, what are we talking about over here? So, of course, any misbainin, anybody who thinks about it understands that we're not talking about like this, it's Shamayim and there's higher Shamayim. Higher Shamayim means that it's more distant from us, the hasaga of how the chesed of Hashem could come down. It's harder for us to see the chesed of Hashem. Hashem has a mechanism of shefa, that when it's a time of Oisin Ritzaynoi Shal Makim and Yisrael Shruyim Al Admasam, there's a sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Shemayim. It's nireh lanu. We have the sense of HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving to us. When it's dark, we don't feel or see HaKadosh Baruch Hu giving to us. That means it's coming from the Olam Olmei Olmai. It's coming from a much, much higher place. It's coming from a place that's Nistar Mimenu. It's coming from a place that's Ganuz. We don't understand the mechanism of how it is that we're in such a gullus, with such things going on in the world today, with such darkness, with such gulliyas, with such tsaras going on today, and that we're recipients of Hashem's chesed. We don't understand, we don't have a tfisa of it. Hashem is no longer being manhig us with the midah of Shamayim. He's being manhig us with the midah of Gavhei Meroimim, of La'olam U'li'olmei Olmaya. How could I not mention the mashal of the Pachad Yitzchak in Chanukah Maimer Ches, where he talks about the famous Chazal, famous because he made it famous, but the Chazal that says, on the pasuk that says, Ki Rabim b'nei Shomeimah b'nei Be'ula, right, says that there are more sons of the desolate wife than sons of the married wife. So Chazal say, Rabim Talmidei Chachamim he'emadeti b'chorbana yoiser mi bibinyana. That Hashem says there are more Talmidei Chachamim that came about after the Churban Beis HaMikdash than when the Beis HaMikdash was standing. And that doesn't make any sense. Because Ki mitzion teitzei soiro dvar Hashem Yerushalayim. Because the Shirish HaTorah is the Makom HaMikdash. The Lishkas HaGazis was there by the Makom HaMikdash. The Shefa Min HaShamayim, that was our kesher to Torah. So how could it be that b'churbana there is a certain level, a certain sophistication of the Talmidei Chacham, even more than in the time of Binyan? And he said a mashal, and the mashal is deceptively simple. It's kedai to check there, Maimer Ches and Pachad Yitzchak Chanukah, but it's deceptively simple. He says that that sometimes a Rebbe is teaching and the Talmud is learning from the Rebbe. And the Talmud listens to the words of the Rebbe that's been thought through and developed and prepared so that the Talmud could understand it. He says sometimes the Rebbe is silent. The Rebbe is lost in his own thoughts. At that time, the Talmud has nothing to learn. The Talmud, it's chayshech, it's darkness. The Rebbe is not the shtikas harav. The shtikas harav. But he said, but what if there was a Talmud that had an ability to connect with the thoughts of the Rebbe? It's a different kind of shir. That's a shir that wasn't being said to him. If you could hear the thoughts of the Rebbe's talking, and well, let's make the mashal a little simpler for us to understand. The Rebbe's talking and learning with himself. You hear the Rebbe, he's walking back and forth, he's going through the sugya himself. That's not what you're hearing in shir, right? So he's going through, and it's a much higher level, and it's much more difficult to understand. It's not for you. But if you're mesugel to listen carefully, there's an element of growth that you could have from being exposed to the machsheves harav that you could never have had just listening to shir as the Rebbe taught it specifically to you. Says Rav Hutner that when the Beis HaMikdash is standing, you see the connection to this Maharal? When the Beis HaMikdash is standing, it's a bechina of the dibur harav. The Rebbe is teaching, Ki mitzia teitzei soira. And certainly there's tremendous growth in Torah. But when that Shamayim is nistar, when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, and the Shefa, I'm using the words of the Maharal to say the Pachad Yitzchak, but the Shefa is coming from the Gavhei Meroimim, it's coming from a higher hidden place. Those of us that toil to understand the Hanhaga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that hidden place, we're getting a much higher tfisa. We're connecting with a much higher place. And that's the Torah of the Gavhei Meroimim. That's the Torah of La'olam U'li'olmei Olmaya. Okay, so this Yesod, I think, is important to understand that this is the Torah of Sheim ve'ever. I will show it to you in an astonishing way in a moment. Bear with me, but I will show it to you in a way it's not stam hanging on nothing. Okay, but let me first explain. The Torah of Sheim ve'ever is to understand that even in the Chayshech there's Ar, that even in the Hester there's Shefa, that even in the Midas Hadin there's Midas HaChesed. The Sheim ve'ever, that's the Raz, that's the secret. That's the place of Soidos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's beyond our comprehension, how things that look so terribly bad could be so incredibly good. That's not something that's in our wheelhouse that we can understand. And that's something that before Yaakov Avinu went to Beis Lavan, before he went to Galus, before he went to his Nisyonos, and the difficulties and the challenges of taking care of the sheep of Lavan, which he did b'Mesiras Nefesh each day, building different parts of Klal Yisrael. We know those sheep are Nishta Pashat Zach. And the toil and the struggle to marry his wives and to have the Shvatim and to protect the Shvatim and then to protect the Shvatim from Lavan and to protect the Shvatim from Esav. All of that journey, the hachana was to spend 14 years in the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'Ever to understand that even though in Eretz Yisrael when he learned Torah, I believe the Rosh Yeshiva once said that there's a lashon in Chazal that says he went to Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'Ever lilabein limudai. Like the Chazer. But it was to take the Torah Eretz Yisrael that's given, it's daytime Torah. It's lichtigkeit. It's clear. And to understand how that could be misparish in the darkness of Galus. That in the darkness of Galus one could still tap into the Tov of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the Torah of Sheim ve'Ever, and that's why he didn't sleep. He didn't sleep because he was spent 14 years understanding that even though David HaMelech cries out, Ura lama tishan Hashem, wake up, why are you sleeping Hashem? The same David HaMelech understands that lo yanum v'lo yishan shemei Yisrael, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not sleeping. In other words, that even when it's so dark, it's daytime by me. So it was lo shachav. He didn't go to sleep. He didn't treat it like the nighttime. He didn't treat it like the Laila. He treated it as a time of not shena, because he was absorbing. It's the same, and after the same yesod that I started with, that things are expressed in the reality of the way they are. The Torah he was learning wasn't sleeping. It was not sleeping. It was that even in Galus Hashem is not sleeping. That the nighttime is daytime. That the nighttime also is a manifestation of Hashem's kindness and shefa. So he didn't make a chiluk between day and night. You want to know, did he sleep, didn't he sleep, what actually happened? You realize once we learn this sugya, it makes very little difference to us. What actually his body did for sleep, it's irrelevant to us. Not an important question. The important nekuda here is that he understood that his learning was to be mischaber with that inyan of the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there's a makaim higher than the place of Tov and Ra. There's a makaim that's so high that even the Ra is Tov. That Hashem is one. Hashem is echad. Hashem is one. And Hashem is one means that just like the good is good, the bad is also good, because Hashem is one. That's the Torah of the Gavhei Meroimim. That's the Torah of La'olam U'Le'olmei Olmaya. I want to point out something that we learned. I don't remember exactly when, but this is what we learned. Okay? The Pasuk says in Parashas Lech Lecha a description of Sheim. Yeah. The pasuk says, Umalki tzedek melech shalem, that's Sheim, haitzi lechem vayoyin, v'hu kohen lekel elyon. Kel elyon, Vayivarcheu vayomer, Baruch Avram lekel elyon, kainei shamayim va'aretz. Sheim's relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is beyond, disconnected from this world. It's kel elyon, la'olam u'le'olmei olmaya. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the Rosh Yeshiva said that it's mat'im that Sheim's madrega was that because he was a guy. Because the idea to be able to connect shamayim and aretz, that's something that only a yid could do. Only a yid brings the carbon shlamim. So it makes sense that the avodah of Sheim was in the part of the hashgacha that's like detached from Olam Hazeh. That's mesulik from Olam Hazeh. But either way, that became the sugya of Sheim, the sugya of the Gavhei Meroimim, the sugya of La'olam U'Le'olmei Olmaya, v'hu kayin l'keil elyon. So Memela, since Sheim is the kayin l'keil elyon, where do you go to learn that Galus is also a zman of chesed? Where do you go to learn that darkness is also a Zman of light? You go to the one who's the Koyed, to that element of the Hashgacha that transcends everything that we see in this world. Hashem Echad. If that's true, then we understand why Yaakov Avinu needed to learn this before he went into Galus. We understand why he didn't sleep when he was B'nei of Sheim ve'ever. We understand why it's called Razei Torah, the secrets of the Torah. Certainly, this is an element of Sisrei Torah to be able to understand the mystery of how Kol Ma'da Ovid Rachmana L'Tav Ovid, how everything Hashem does is L'Taiv. And we understand another very, very important thing that I'll end with. We understand the following. That Yaakov Avinu is the person to teach this to us. Because Yaakov Avinu is the one who, and those of you, Naftali, some others that have been following my drushes through Parshas Chumash Bereishis will have a particular appreciation of this. But Yaakov Avinu is the one who took, he learned in the Beis Medrash of Avram Avinu. And he absorbed Avram Avinu teaching about the Midas HaChesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is so good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Goimel Chasadim Toivim. And then Yaakov Avinu turned his attention to the Beis Medrash of Yitzchak. And the Beis Medrash of Yitzchak, he learned about how powerful HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. And how exact HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, the Midas HaDin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And those two things are two opposite tenuos in the nefesh of a person. Appreciating the chesed of Hashem and recognizing the din of Hashem, those are two opposite things. And we had an Av, Yaakov Avinu, that had the ability to understand not just how to do both, but how they're not a contradiction, which is beyond our hasaga. It's an asid lavai dika hasaga. It's shaykh to asid lavai. How Hashem echad, u'shmai echad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one, and that means when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one, the din and the chesed is the same midah. That's something that Yaakov Avinu understood. So Yaakov Avinu was the one who was misugel to learn by the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever, to understand, it looks like it's dark. Midas Adin, don't worry, it's Midas HaChesed. It's all one midah. Yaakov Avinu, the one who fused Beisai Shel Avram and Beisai Shel Yitzchak, he's the one who's shayach to Sheim ve'ever. But by the Tzad Shekeneged, by the Tzad HaTumah, where Esav represents Midas Adin, and Yishmael represents Midas HaChesed, and Esav tried to connect with Yishmael, Vayelech Esav el Yishmael, and Esav tried to connect with Yishmael, tried to fuse together the Din and the Chesed in the Kilkul Tumadik way that they lived it. Yishmael dies before Esav is able to marry his daughter, because it can't fuse. So when the Pasuk is telling us, Esav attempted to fuse the Chesed and Din, and was unsuccessful, Rashi whispers, follow the Cheshbon. Yaakov Avinu learned the Beis Midrash Shel Sheim for 14 years. He fused it together. He was Zaycha to understand the fusion of the two midas. And that's the secret limud that comes out from the Vayelech Esav El Yishmael. And this is so, so, so important for us to recognize in a time that sometimes things seem so dark. Whether it's elections, or whether it's the situation of the Bnei Torah in Eretz Yisrael, or whether it's the terrorist attacks, or it's the anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, there's so much to choose from. When you think about the difficulties and the nisyonos and the challenges and the pirud that Klal Yisrael is facing today. But when we learn Chumash Bereishis and we follow, we have the schus to have our fathers holding our hands, our Tata Avram and our Tata Yitzchak and our Tata Yaakov holding our hands. It strengthens our emunah that Hine lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. People were in New York. There was a big scare when this guy won the election. Like, what's going to be? And the Rabbanim and the Rosh Yeshiva at the time, they turned their attention back to the Olam. I heard it in multiple different Ifanim to be like, nothing changed. Nothing changed. We had a hishtadlus to do. We did the hishtadlus. Okay, us in Connecticut, we couldn't do much, but we did our hishtadlus. Nothing changed. We're under the hashgacha of Rabbi Sonnenschein that loves us. Maybe it's not Shamayim v'aretz. Maybe it's Kel Elyon. Maybe it's Gavei Meraimim. Maybe it's La'olam u'li'olmei olmaya. But today more than ever, it's not elusive. Today more than ever, we too sit in the Beis Medrash of Sheim ve'ever. and we absorb that lesson, everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is l'toiva seinu, because He loves us, because this is how He takes care of us, because this is a manifestation of the chesed of Hashem. Maybe the Rebbe is not giving shir. One day we'll hear the shir from the Rebbe, and we'll understand the oimek of the godless of that shir. But today we could push ourselves, like we are tonight, push ourselves to understand the shtikas harav, the silence of the Rav, and who knows the extent of the kirvas alekim and the greatness that we achieve when we do that. Yashar Koach. Thank you.